Like all the stories I tell you, the events in this story are all true, although no one has a valid explanation for any of it, and it's been years since this happened. And it's actually baffled so many people that they were going to make a movie about this, and I'm pretty surprised that Netflix hasn't caught on and started making like a movie or documentary about it yet. Probably will in the future, but basically what happened is that in 1980, Etta Louise Smith was 32 years old. She was a very level-headed woman. She worked in a white-collar job at an aerospace facility in Burbank, California. And for this position, she needed to go through security clearance and she needed to be vetted. So they basically made sure that she had no criminal record and that she was just an all-round trusty person, which would make her right for the job in some aspects. She had a very normal life leading up to this point, and as a child, Etta always felt a little bit different, and these feelings that she used to have as a child didn't really come back to her during adult life, not up until December 1980. Except this time, these feelings that she got and experiences that she was getting landed her in jail, and she could have had the death penalty because of it. Hi, my name's Yasmin and I tell stories about topics that are scary, disturbing, or true crime. So if you'd like to, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and we'll get straight into the video. In December of 1980, there was news circulating around town about a young nurse in her early 30s, and her name was Melanie Uribe. Melanie Uribe was a single mum to an 8-year-old boy, and she worked very hard to give her son a good life. She would always turn up to work, so it struck her colleagues as very unusual and out of character that she failed to make an appearance to work on a night shift on December 15th. People from work were so concerned that they actually tried to call her home phone, but there was no answer. So as the hours went by, their concern just grew and grew, and they contacted the police that night, which I think is quite good of them, because if that happened to most people, like if that happened to me, I don't think anyone would call the police immediately, but whatever. So they called the police, and a lot of the time when police are called and the person hasn't been missing for 24 hours at least, they don't really do anything because they could turn up later on. But the police received an additional phone call stating that someone had found a pickup truck that was on fire with a nurse's uniform that was found nearby. Both of these items belonged to Melanie, but no Melanie was in sight. Police only had one witness who stated that the pickup truck was stopped at a red light at an intersection and two men approached the car. One forced their way in from the driver's seat and the other forced their way in from the passenger's seat. They then quickly shut the car doors and drove off with Melanie inside, and this witness could hear Melanie's blood-curdling screams as the pickup truck sped away. The police had no leads, and this was really concerning because something had definitely happened to her and they were desperate to find her. So police went door to door knocking, asking if anyone had any information, and they searched the area. I think they actually even searched the area on horseback, but still they could find nothing. 2 days later, the police received an unsettling phone call from Etta. So I'd like to say that Etta had no relation to Melanie, and the first time she'd even heard of Melanie, in fact, was over the radio when police were reporting that Melanie had gone missing. Etta called the police claiming that she knew exactly where Melanie was and that she was no longer alive. And police usually receive, well, not usually, but a lot of the time they receive phone calls like this when a person goes missing, and it sends them on a wild goose chase and it doesn't really amount to anything. But in this case, as I said, they had no leads, so they really had nothing to lose when they just called Etta into the station and asked her what her story was. And Etta got a map out and she pointed to the middle of nowhere, which was sort of on the outskirts of San Fernando Valley, near an area called Lopez Valley, and she said, "This is where Melanie's body will be found." Etta was suspiciously specific about what the whole scene looked like and where Melanie's body would be found. She said that her body was in a valley with sparse bushes surrounding her, and she said that she wasn't wearing any shoes. And Etta actually went to the area. She didn't tell police this, but she actually went to the area with her 2 young daughters to confirm that all of this was actually true. Her 8-year-old daughter was the one who ended up spotting a white nurse's shoe on a windy dirt path in the valley. And just a little bit up ahead, she was the one who also found Melanie's badly beaten body in a bush, which would have been so traumatic, and I'm not sure why she even brought her children here, but whatever. Sure enough though, police investigated the area and Etta's claims turned out to be true. Now obviously, this means that Etta is a suspect, because how could she know all of this without being involved in the crime and not knowing anyone who was involved? Etta was interrogated for hours, and no matter what, she was not going to confess to something that she did not do. But her story made no sense to the police, and they knew she had to be lying. They couldn't get a confession out of her no matter what situation they put her in either, and she even took a voluntary polygraph test, which she did pass. They even locked her up in a freezing cold jail cell with horrible conditions and told her that she could even end up with the death penalty if she didn't confess. But Etta was never going to admit to this, okay? She was going to go to jail for the rest of her life or end up with the death penalty. She didn't care because she wasn't going to lie about it. This was Etta's story, and I'm interested to know what you think about it as well once you get like a full picture of what's happened. Etta claimed that the night she heard the news of Melanie going missing over the radio, something inside her changed. She said that she could almost hear a voice in her head telling her that Melanie would not be found in a house and that she was deceased. She then started receiving these like quick fire, rapid images in her head, and she could easily describe them in such detail, which is how she found Melanie's body in the first place. She said that she could see this canyon with white nurse's shoes along a dirt path, and in the distance she could see these little hills with little bits of like shrubbery dotted across all of them, or like bushes, I guess. To police, this wasn't a valid explanation, of course, and knowing Melanie's body's whereabouts was enough evidence to suggest that Etta was either directly involved or indirectly involved in this crime. There was no way she could know. Etta was in a way kind of lucky though, because 4 days later the police identified a man who was seemingly bragging about committing this brutal crime to one of his friends. And he was speaking as if he was super stoked about the fact that he got away with it and he just outsmarted the police. But he was stupid, and police brought him into the station for questioning. But they weren't able to charge him with anything or arrest him because they needed evidence, and they had none, so they had to get a confession out of him. But how were they going to do that? Well, they kind of lied. In a way, they lied. They said that they knew where the body was and that they knew it was him. And that if he confessed and provided information about the other people that were involved in the crime, then he wouldn't be given the death penalty. Due to this, the police were actually able to establish that 3 individuals were involved in the crime, and this included 20-year-old Lewis Morgan, 21-year-old Spencer Nelson, and a 17-year-old minor. So the 20 and 21-year-old men were intensely interrogated, and they were also able to describe the location of the body without having any prior knowledge. Now, the location of the body was not public knowledge at this point, so these people would have had to commit the crime to know exactly where Melanie's body would have been, and the description matched Etta's one perfectly. So in the end, they confessed everything, and they were sentenced to life in prison. But where does Etta fit into all of this? Surprisingly, none of the boys, that committed the crime had even heard of somebody named Etta Louise Smith. They didn't have any mutual connections, and I guess why would they? Etta was this established working woman. She was successful in her career. She had her own family. And then there were these guys that were, budding criminals. They just wouldn't really cross paths in their everyday life. So what the police did was they released Etta from jail after 4 long days, and they concluded that Etta had a psychic ability to be able to pinpoint the body. 7 years passed and Etta sued the police department and actually won the trial. She was awarded $26,000 in compensation for emotional and physical harm of being wrongly accused, and also spending 4 nights in jail. The thing is, Etta could have easily never provided this information that she knew. She had no ulterior motive. She didn't actually want anything back, and she returned to her life as per normal after all of this. The thing that interests me the most about this case is the fact that no one knows how and why Etta truly got these visions, and whether she even got them in the first place. Did she really have some sort of psychic ability? Also, if this ever happened to you, would you go and tell the police? I reckon it's too risky, because unless you get a stroke of luck like Etta, you could probably end up in prison for the rest of your life when you were just trying to be helpful in the first place. I've actually read a few cases like this where like people claim that they're a psychic and they find the body, and it really annoys me because I truly don't know how it works. And personally, I don't believe in psychics, but I mean, there's no explanation, so it drives me crazy. But I'd love to know what you think, and feel free to leave a comment. That's the story for this week. As I always say, I post once a week. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next week. Bye. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, I will be going on maternity leave in, well, who knows when really, because the baby could be born at any time. When that does happen, I'm probably going to be posting weekly for another few weeks, and then I'm going to take a long break, but I will be back. I'm just warning you before it all happens. Not that there's like hundreds of people that watch this anyway, but it doesn't matter. I enjoy doing it, and I just wanted to let you know rather than leaving you in the dark in case something happens between now and then. Anyway, okay, bye.